The Hunger Games is a series based on the political turmoil and colonial exploitation in the nation of PANEM, a dystopian futuristic society located in what is present-day America. The story follows the protagonist, Katniss, who is a young girl from District 12, as she becomes a tribute for the 74th Hunger Games, succeeds in winning the Hunger Games, and experiences a series of events and actions that result in her becoming the figurehead of the rebellion against the capital's government. A war breaks out in PANEM between District 13, the rebellion leader led by its president Coin, and the authoritative capital government controlled by President Snow. While Katniss' situation in the Hunger Games may seem completely foreign to anything experienced in our modern society, many aspects of her journey can actually be compared to that of none other than Donald Trump. By comparing these two personalities, we can discover key similarities and differences between the structures of PANEM in the United States, and specifically how media plays a role in the rise and prominence of Katniss and Trump, as well as the response from their respective countries. The best way to go about comparing Katniss to Trump is equating the Hunger Games to the U.S. presidential elections. Both are competitions and key institutions upholding the successful functioning of their respective countries. Also, especially in modern times, a U.S. presidential debate can be just as violent as a knife fight.
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush.
Now, let's get into comparing the experiences of Katniss and Donald Trump within these respective competitions. The first thing that makes Katniss stand out as opposed to other tributes and reject the status quo of the Hunger Games is her volunteering for her sister Prim at the Reaping. If we are comparing the Hunger Games to the U.S. presidential elections, the U.S. equivalent to the Reaping can be seen as the presidential primaries, in which the presidential nominees are selected. Like Katniss, Trump stood out among other candidates within the 2016 presidential primaries, rejecting the more civilized order everyone else seemed to follow. This caused many to resonate with him, as people did with Katniss after her volunteering, launching him into prominence and gaining him the status as presidential nominee. After becoming a tribute, Katniss got her nickname as the Girl on Fire in her interviews, standing out as a crowd favorite. Trump did a similar thing in the 2016 presidential debates with Hillary Clinton, pulling off stunts and clever remarks that evoked a thunderous audience reaction.
You know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Despite this, when the 2016 election began, Trump had very low odds of winning. Some polls projected him as having as low as a 10% chance.
There's a lot of football left to be played, but she's ahead in almost every poll, every swing state, every national poll.
This was just like Katniss at the start of the Hunger Games, as although she was well known by the audience, she was a complete underdog to her competitors such as the career tributes. Nevertheless, both she and Trump pulled through, her winning the Hunger Games and Trump winning the 2016 presidential election. However, their victories were in no way considered orthodox and caused for extreme anger and unhappiness from within the PANEM government and the United States government. Katniss's way of victory was hated so much by President Snow that she was sent back into the arena for the quarter quell by the people at the head of the institution she had just conquered. And of course, a similar thing happened with Trump when he was impeached twice and then not elected for a second term. Soon after both of these events, major unrest began to ensue, both in PANEM and the United States. At this point, both Katniss and Trump became greater symbols for political movements, Katniss becoming the Mockingjay, the symbol of the rebellion, and Trump the chosen one.
I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it.
The leader of the Make America Great Again movement. Like Katniss by the districts, Trump became embraced by the American public as a symbol for resistance and freedom, becoming embedded in pop culture and an icon for many different social movements. After becoming the Mockingjay, Katniss goes on to lead the District 13 rebellion. Trump, after becoming an established icon following his 2020 presidential election loss, begins his monumental 2024 campaign. Both Katniss and Trump are met with extreme opposition, causing for direct actions against them by their enemies, and even for both of them to get shot.
To Snow.
Take a look at what happened.
Marking a turning point for each of their respective movements. While the journeys were tough, eventually both Katniss and Trump scaled the odds and achieved redemption. Katniss getting retribution against the Capitol, and Trump getting revenge against Washington, winning the 2024 election. Evidently, there are some similarities between the characters and journeys of Katniss and Trump. These parallels extend to the use of media in their rise to fame. The capturing of Katniss's critical moments of bravery, both inside and outside the arena, is what causes her to become the Mockingjay, as people see her actions and associate associate them with a greater cause. The same goes for Trump, as without his presidential candidacy being projected through media, he would not have made the same impression on the American public, which caused him to become a symbol and dominate in the 2024 election. Both figures also relied on propaganda in order to assert their authority. Much of the third Hunger Games book is centered around the information war between the Capitol and District 13. Trump, like Katniss, also made similar propaganda to promote his campaign against the Biden-Harris administration. So, being that there are so many similarities, is the United States turning into Panem? Well, there is one discrepancy in terms of the reaction of the public to both Katniss and Trump that is important to consider when evaluating this question. Dramatic and violent civil war ensues in Panem in response to Katniss, causing thousands of lives to be lost and the entire governmental system to be turned over. While in America, similar drastic internal violence has not broken out over Trump. This discrepancy highlights the key difference in the media of an authoritative state and a democracy. In Panem, before the rebellion, Snow's regime was able to stay in power because of his absolute control over the single-stream media in Panem, controlling the narrative that established the Hunger Games as necessary and associated the districts with zero power. However, with the rise of District 13, a propaganda war began to break out, and the cracks in Snow's narrative began to show, causing the districts to realize the vulnerability of the government. The conflicting two sources of media that then developed in Panem, one being District 13's propaganda and the other, the Capitol, caused for complete polarization to occur, as demonstrated by Snow's government. The only way to manage a single media society is to have isolated authoritative power in the leadership. However, this also corresponds with civil war being necessary in order to create governmental change. We have seen this fact come to fruition in societies throughout history, such as Libya, which has had a pattern of chaos breaking out in events such as the Arab Spring or its civil war in order to shift leadership, or Syria, where similar fallout has occurred. Thus, it was inevitable that upon the loss of Snow's full agenda setting caused by Katniss's influence on the media, the war in Panem was bound to happen. In America, although society is perhaps more polarized than ever, democratic media allows the nation to stay intact. Although Trump and Biden both use propaganda to propel their campaigns, the existence of the third-party media, otherwise known as the fourth pillar of democracy, provides checks and balances over their agenda setting that are not present in Panem. For instance, towards the end of Biden's term, while his administration consistently put out statements declaring the president was in perfect health,
They say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot.
third-party media channels release contradicting information.
Times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration.
Trump has also received ample criticism from the media, which has influenced some of his policies on key issues ranging from tariffs to immigration. Without the presence of independent media in the U.S., unchecked narratives could snowball into conflict similar to what is seen in Panem, where total control of the media agenda is possessed by leaders, causing for immense instability in the government. Although the entire system of democracy can be credited for the U.S.'s peacefulness compared to Panem's oppressive state, it is largely the freedom of speech within the media that contributes to the balance and narrative at an executive level that keeps one political party or administration from assuming complete control, and correspondingly from the rise of rebellious, unorthodox personalities dismantling the country into chaos. In conclusion, through the rise of Donald Trump and the involvement of propaganda, especially in the 2016 through 2024 elections, the United States has experienced similar movement and conflict to what is witnessed in Panem through Katniss's journey in the Hunger Games series. However, it is the democracy of the United States, and specifically the independent media, that prevents the U.S. from turning into Panem. So next time you're complaining about watching Jake Tapper on CNN, Sean Hannity on Fox, or Tucker Carlson on Twitter, just be happy that you aren't stuck watching Caesar Flickerman, because the news you're watching might just be preventing you from fighting against peacekeepers in a civil war.